Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going deep into the world of ophthalmology, specifically the role of oxidative stress in glaucoma.
It's a fascinating area, especially when we look at how certain molecules might offer a path to protection.
And we've got some great sources to guide us, a couple of recent medical research articles on glaucoma. And get this, the role of mitochondria in those retinal ganglion cells, the RGCs.
Right, the RGCs. Those are key players in this whole story.
Absolutely. So our mission today, well, was to break down this complex topic, pull out the fascinating details, and hopefully leave you with a clearer understanding of what's going on. And maybe, just maybe, we'll uncover some potential implications for your practice.
Sounds like a plan. Ready to dive in.
Absolutely. So glaucoma, I mean, we all know it's a leading cause of blindness worldwide, but what really makes this disease so tricky is that it's not just an eye disease, It goes deeper.
Yeah, it's a neurodegenerative condition. You're right. It impacts the entire visual pathway, not just the eye itself, all the way to the brain.
The whole shebang.
The whole shebang. And you know what's interesting?
What's that?
There's growing evidence that there are some shared mechanisms with other neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, for example.
Like what?
We're seeing things like the presence of amyloid deposits and p-tau protein in glaucoma patients.
And those are hallmarks of Alzheimer's, right?
Exactly. So it raises a fascinating question. Could some of the mechanisms be shared between these diseases?
And if so, what does that mean for treatment? Could we be borrowing strategies from other fields?
It's a possibility that that researchers are actively exploring. If some of the underlying processes are similar, it could open up a whole new avenue for treatment.
So we've got this neurodegenerative element to contend with. But to really understand what's happening at the cellular level in glaucoma, we need to talk about the researchers call it the pathogenic triumvirate.
Yeah, the pathogenic triumvirate. Sounds a little ominous, doesn't it?
A bit, yeah.
It's actually a very descriptive term. It refers to the three major players that kind of wreak havoc in glaucoma. We're talking about inflammatory stress, metabolic stress, and of course, the star of our show today, oxidative stress.
A triple threat. And they don't just work independently, right?
No, at all. These three stresses, they interact, they intertwine, they gang up, you could say, to damage those precious retinal ganglion cells.
So tell me more about this oxidative stress. What is it exactly? What's going on there?
Well, in essence, oxidative stress is an imbalance. It's an imbalance between the production of reactive oxygen species, those are the infamous ROS molecules, and the body's ability to kind of neutralize them.
Okay, so ROS, those are the bad guys.
Well, not always. You see, our cells are constantly producing ROS as a byproduct of normal metabolism. It's like exhaust fumes from a car. A little bit is manageable, even necessary, but too much, and it can cause serious damage.
Got it. So our bodies have ways of dealing with these exhaust fumes, but in glaucoma, it's like the system is overwhelmed, right?
Exactly. And that's where those RGCs, those retinal ganglion cells, become particularly vulnerable. Remember, they're the ones transmitting those visual signals from the retina all the way to the brain.
A long journey.
It is. And it's a very energy-intensive journey.
So RGCs are kind of like long-distance runners, constantly needing fuel to keep going.
I like that analogy. And to keep up with that high energy demand, RGCs, they rely heavily on their mitochondria for energy production.
And mitochondria, those are the powerhouses of the cell, right?
Exactly. But here's the catch. The mitochondria are also a major source of, you guessed it, ROS.
A double-edged sword there.
It is. So the more energy the RGCs need, the more ROS they produce, which unfortunately makes them even more susceptible to damage.
That is a vicious cycle.
It is, and it gets even more complicated. The distribution of mitochondria within RGCs actually differs depending on their location.
What do you mean?
Well, inside the eyeball, where those RGC axons are unmyelinated, there's a much higher density of mitochondria.
Unmyelinated. Refresh my memory on what that means.
Sure. Think of myelin as insulation around a wire. It helps conduct electrical signals more efficiently. RGC axons outside the eye, they have this myelin sheath, so they can transmit signals with less energy. But inside the eye, no such luck.
So it's like the RGCs outside the eye, they're cruising along on the freeway, and the ones inside, they're stuck in rush hour traffic, burning more fuel and spewing out more exhaust.
A perfect way to visualize it. And if those rush hour RGCs get bombarded with ROS, they're in big trouble.
This is pretty grim. So What can we do about it? Are there ways to protect those vulnerable RGCs from oxidative stress?
Well, thankfully, researchers are on the case. They're investigating a whole range of molecules that show promise in combating oxidative stress and promoting RGC survival.
Okay, let's hear about these molecular heroes.
Right.
What are some of the front runners in this fight against oxidative damage?
Well, one of the most promising is brimonidine. I'm sure you're familiar with its IOP lowering effects.
Of course. Brimonidine, it's a staple in glaucoma treatment. But are you saying it does more than just lower IOP?
Exactly. What's really exciting is that brimonidine also exhibits direct neuroprotective effects, and these effects are independent of its impact on IOP. It actually gets into those RGCs and seems to boost their resilience against oxidative damage.
So brimonidine is like a bodyguard for those RGCs, shielding them from that oxidative onslaught.
That's a great way to put it. Studies suggest it might even increase the activity of certain protective enzymes within the cells.
That's incredible. What other molecules are showing promise? What else is out there?
Well, there's nicotinamide, also known as vitamin B3. Researchers are investigating its potential to enhance mitochondrial function.
So making those little powerhouses more efficient, less prone to ROS production.
Exactly. It's like giving those mitochondria a tune-up.
Yeah.
And then there's coenzyme Q10, or CoQ10, a powerful antioxidant that can directly neutralize ROS.
So it's like a cleanup crew for those damaging exhaust fumes.
I like that. And there's another one, citicoline, involved in cell membrane repair and neurotransmitter production, helps those RGCs maintain their structural integrity and keep those signals flowing.
So many options. It's amazing to think that something as simple as a vitamin could play a role in protecting vision.
It really is. And there's another class of molecules we should talk about, neurotrophic factors. These are crucial for RGC health.
Ah, yes, neurotrophic factors. Those are like what? Fertilizer for neurons? Help them grow and thrive.
Precisely. But here's the thing. In glaucoma, we see a depletion of these crucial factors, particularly CNTF and BDNF. And that depletion, well, it contributes to RGC death. Makes it even harder for those cells to survive the stress.
So not only are they being bombarded by ROS, they're also being starved of essential nutrients. That's rough.
It is. But the good news is researchers are exploring ways to replenish these neurotrophic factors.
Oh, like what?
One promising avenue is the development of delivery systems, like implants, that can release CNTF directly into the retina, providing those RGCs with the nourishment they need.
Like setting up a little feeding station right where it's needed most.
Exactly. And there are other approaches being investigated as well. Gene therapy, for example. It's really a fascinating field. Gene therapy holds immense potential, you know? It's basically a way to deliver therapeutic genes directly into the cells, almost like reprogramming them for better health.
Reprogramming them. That sounds pretty cutting edge.
Yeah.
But are there any risks involved with that? And how far off is this technology? I mean, are we talking, Star Trek stuff, or is this something that could actually be available for our patients?
Those are great questions. I think it's important to remember that gene therapy for glaucoma, it's still in its early stages. There are definitely challenges that we need to overcome, safety concerns, efficient delivery systems. But preclinical studies, they've shown some really encouraging results. It's definitely a field worth watching closely.
Okay, so how would gene therapy work in the context of protecting RGCs? I mean, what would that look like?
Well, one strategy, it involves using viral vectors. But don't worry, they're harmless. Think of them like microscopic delivery trucks.
Okay, microscopic delivery trucks. Got it.
Right? And these trucks, they carry genes that encode those neurotrophic factors, the CNTF and BDNF that we talked about earlier,
Right.
and they deliver them directly into the RGCs, boosting their production right where it's needed most.
So it's like giving those RGCs their own internal pharmacy, churning out those protective factors.
Exactly. And researchers are also exploring genes that can enhance the RGC's own antioxidant defenses, their natural ability to fight off those ROS molecules.
So it's not just about external support, it's about empowering the RGCs to fight their own battles.
That's right. It's about harnessing the cell's own resilience.
I like that. All of this is incredibly fascinating, but I have to admit, gene therapy still feels a little bit science fiction-y.
I can understand that.
Are there other approaches that might be less invasive, or maybe closer to being available, in our clinics?
Absolutely. Nanotechnology is another really exciting area of research for delivering these neuroprotective therapies. It utilizes incredibly tiny particles, like nanoparticles or exosomes, to transport drugs or other therapeutic agents directly to the retina.
Nanoparticles. How tiny are we talking about here?
Tiny. I mean, really, really tiny. So small we can barely even imagine them.
That's mind-boggling.
It is. But their tiny size is actually what makes them so effective. We can engineer them to bypass biological barriers like the blood-brain barrier, which, as you know, can be a major obstacle for traditional drug delivery, especially to the central nervous system, including the retina.
So these nanoparticles are like, what, stealthy ninjas? Slipping past the defenses and delivering their payload. No more struggling to get medications where they need to go.
I like that analogy. And what's even more remarkable is that we can actually design these nanoparticles to release their content slowly over time, providing sustained protection to those cells.
Oh, wow. So that means, what, fewer injections for patients? Longer lasting effects? Sounds like a win-win to me. You mentioned exosomes, too. Are those similar to nanoparticles?
They are. Exosomes are actually naturally occurring nanoparticles produced by our own cells.
Oh, interesting.
They're like little tiny bubbles that cells use to communicate with each other, transporting various molecules.
So we're borrowing a page from the body's own playbook.
Exactly. And because they're naturally produced by our cells, exosomes have this great advantage. They're biocompatible, meaning they're less likely to trigger an immune response, which can sometimes be a concern with some synthetic nanoparticles.
That makes sense. I can see why researchers are so excited about this. So we've covered a lot of ground here today, from that pathogenic triumvirate to bromatidine and its unexpected superpowers, to gene therapy and all of these incredible nanotechnologies. It seems like there's a lot of hope on the horizon for our glaucoma patients.
I think so. And I think it's worth emphasizing, again, that this shift in focus from just IOP reduction to actually, actively targeting those neuroprotective pathways, this is groundbreaking. For too long, we've been treating the symptom, the elevated pressure, without really fully addressing the underlying disease process, the degeneration of the RGCs.
It's like trying to fix a leaky roof while ignoring the termites that are eating away at the foundation.
Exactly. And those
Uh-huh.
RGCs, those vital messengers of vision, they've been paying the price for that neglect. But with these new approaches, I really think we're starting to get at the root of the problem. Giving those RGCs a fighting chance.
This is really empowering. But I think it's important to bring it back to our listeners. Those ophthalmologists out there on the front lines. What what should they take away from all of this? What does it mean for their patients in their everyday practice?
The key takeaway, I think, is that we're entering a new era in glaucoma treatment, one where we can go beyond simply managing pressure and actually start actively protecting those vulnerable RGCs and understanding the mechanisms. And these emerging therapies, it's essential for providing the best possible care.
So it's about staying ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
being informed, being able to offer our patients more than just hope, real options for preserving their vision.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that glaucoma, it's not a one-size-fits-all disease. Just like every patient is unique, so too is their experience with glaucoma.
That's a great point. We talked about those shared mechanisms with Alzheimer's, but even within glaucoma, there's such a wide spectrum of presentations and responses to treatment. What works for one patient might not work for another.
Precisely. And that's why ongoing research is so vital. We need to continue exploring those different subtypes of glaucoma, the various factors that contribute to RGC death, and the most effective ways to tailor our treatment strategies, to each individual patient to protect those crucial cells.
It's about moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach to something much more personalized, much more targeted.
Exactly.
And it sounds like those individual strategies, they're going to be increasingly informed by these new neuroprotective therapies.
Absolutely. I think it's safe to say that the future of glaucoma treatment is looking brighter than ever.
Well said. And with that hopeful note, let's wrap up this deep dive with a concise summary of the key points for our listeners.
Yeah.
All right, so let's recap. We covered lots of information, but what are the key takeaways? What should our listeners remember from this deep dive?
Well, the most important point, I think, is recognizing that glaucoma, it's not simply an eye problem. It's a neurodegenerative disease. It affects that entire visual pathway from the retina all the way to the brain. And this understanding, it really changes how we approach treatment.
Right, and we can't forget about that pathogenic triumvirate, the three main culprits, I guess you could say, in glaucoma: inflammatory stress, metabolic stress, and of course, the one we focused on today, oxidative stress.
Right. That imbalance between those damaging reactive oxygen species, the ROS, and the body's ability to fight back.
And those RGCs, those retinal ganglion cells, they're particularly vulnerable to that oxidative damage
Yeah.
because of their high energy demands and their reliance on those mitochondria, which, as we learned, are also a significant source of ROS. So it's like they're running a marathon with a leaky fuel tank.
That's a great analogy. And to make matters worse, the RGCs inside the eye, they lack that protective myelin sheath, so they need even more energy, which means even more ROS. Talk about an uphill battle.
It is. But the good news is researchers are developing some really exciting new therapies to combat that oxidative stress, to protect those RGCs. We talked about brimonidine,
Right, brimonidine.
which not only lowers IOP, but also seems to have some direct neuroprotective effects within the cells.
Exactly. It's a bit of a multitasker.
It is, lowering pressure and bolstering the RGC's defenses at the same time. Very impressive. And then there are other promising molecules out there too, like nicotinamide,
Yeah.
Q10, citicoline, each with its own unique mechanism for fighting that oxidative damage.
Right. And we can't forget about those neurotrophic factors, those essential nutrients that the RGCs need for survival.
Yeah, replenishing those factors through targeted delivery systems like implants. That could be huge.
Absolutely.
It's like giving those hardworking RGCs a much-needed energy boost.
Yeah.
It's some extra armor
Yeah.
to withstand that oxidative onslaught.
And then we have gene therapy and nanotechnology.
Yeah.
Potentially revolutionizing how we deliver these neuroprotective therapies. Imagine being able to reprogram those RGCs for greater resilience, or deliver targeted treatments with pinpoint accuracy.
It sounds almost futuristic, but the research is moving so fast. It really is an exciting time to be in ophthalmology. We're moving beyond simply managing symptoms, and we're starting to address those root causes of this disease.
I agree. And that's the real takeaway here. We're entering a new era of glaucoma treatment, one that's focused on neuroprotection, and that offers real hope for preserving vision.
So for all of our listeners out there, those dedicated ophthalmologists who are working so hard to protect their patient sight, this deep dive, it's all about equipping you with the knowledge and the insights you need to navigate this exciting new frontier in glaucoma care. So keep learning, keep exploring, keep pushing the boundaries. of what's possible.
And remember, as we discover more about these shared neurodegenerative pathways, treatments for glaucoma, they might even hold promise for other conditions, like Alzheimer's, for example. It's a good reminder that everything is connected, and the pursuit of knowledge, well, it can lead to some really unexpected breakthroughs.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we're all in this together, constantly learning, constantly innovating, and constantly striving to make a real difference in the lives of our patients.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of oxidative stress and neuroprotection.
In glaucoma. Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep those